Mike Weber. I run marketing for Upshop. We are operations technology for the store.
And I'm Derek Hannum. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for ReposiTrak, and we're the leading supply chain data management company currently focused on helping the retail food supply chain deal with the challenges of traceability.
Ultimately, we're bringing to market the biggest answer to traceability and FSMA 204 by uniting ReposiTrak supplier network, as Derek's point, the largest supplier network of supplier data, with Upshop's in-store operation system, so that you can have pretty much from source to supply visibility for all items, which helps you get to the high-risk items that are demanded for FSMA 204. But ultimately, in the long term, there could be even more items that you need to manage recalls around and guarantee food safety for. So we are bringing that control now to retailers. The beauty is that because we're putting two pretty significant proven players with technology that's running across the entire supply chain, this is ready to go now. So if you think about when it goes into effect, we're nearly 365 days away. I believe it's January 20th, 2026. And this is all about really adding rigor and protection to the consumer by forcing retailers to be able to track high-risk items. But it goes so beyond that. So Derek can explain.
Sure. And what's interesting is that, as Mike mentioned, this is an FDA regulation it's technically in effect today. The enforcement deadline is a year away, right? So the FDA gave the industry 3 years to come into compliance. 2 of those years have passed, and here we are now on the verge of 12 months away from the enforcement deadline. But what's interesting is it's really just been a catalyst for the industry to start looking at creating a digitally connected supply chain, because that's what traceability requires. And leading retailers now are actually moving beyond the list of high-risk foods that the FDA has stipulated must be tracked and have announced they're tracing all foods. So what we actually see now is more of an industry-driven initiative around traceability that's focused on not only the food safety aspects, but supply chain efficiency and store-level visibility and the consumer, right? Ultimately the consumer. And that's why we're so excited about this partnership with Upshop, because synergy is an overused word, right? Obviously, but this is almost a perfectly synergistic relationship, because Upshop is the leading solution for store automation and store operations excellence, and ReposiTrak is the supply chain, right? And when you marry those two things together, really for traceability, the most challenging leg is the distribution center to the store. And when you marry what ReposiTrak can do with suppliers and distribution center data tracking with what Mike's team at Upshop does with store level execution, it's a powerful combination. And it goes beyond just traceability compliance, because it starts to unlock all of the bottom line and top line impact that Upshop can deliver in the stores. ReposiTrak can help to superpower that by pushing data into Upshop that they couldn't otherwise get, because we own those supplier relationships today. So it's really exciting.
With all the recalls that have happened, from cheese to cold cuts to peanut to spreads, it's more top of mind than ever. I mean, when you think about romaine, there's a Netflix show, right, that highlights the dangers of now leafy greens. This is a market issue. It's a consumer issue. And the best retailers, there was a bar. The bar is so much higher for how you guarantee that sort of safety element to have your trust with your shoppers.
News in any way spreads faster today than it ever did before, in more ways than it ever did before. So certainly consumers are more informed about it than they ever were before. But the science around the investigations of foodborne illness have advanced significantly. And so the state, and local health departments, in conjunction with the FDA and in coordination with the FDA that do these investigations, they can link the products and the sources of the products and the outbreaks better now than they ever could before. But what they can't do is quickly understand the source of a product, particularly an agricultural product, right, or an aquaculture product. Seafood and produce are really the biggest part of the FDA-focused food traceability program. They can't figure out where the product came from quickly, because it comes from so many different places and through so many different channels before it arrives at the store where we as consumers actually see it. unlike a packaged good, a consumer packaged good, which is easier to track back to the factory, the manufacturing facility. Where did the lettuce come from? Not just what state, what country, right? Because it's a global supply chain now. So that's really the focus of traceability in the eyes of the FDA, is to rapidly accelerate the investigations to contain the outbreaks. That's really the public health focus of the traceability rule. But as a byproduct of that, retailers can now say, oh, if I have to connect my supply chain for visibility, for traceability, what else happens as a result of that, right? Ordering gets more accurate, right? Store receiving processes can be automated and be more accurate. All of the things that Upshop does in the store in terms of freshness management and the consumer experience all get better when you have full visibility into what's coming from the suppliers in the supply chain. So it's an exciting time from our perspective to be in the supply chain, which is, we often joke about what we do as plumbing, right? Because a lot of what we do, tracking data behind the scenes, is kind of like plumbing. It's not very sexy. You don't think about it very much when you take a shower or turn on the water in the morning. But when the plumbing doesn't work, it's a real problem.
That many times in a recall, the outcome of the prevalence of the information leads people to just say, I can't even buy the category. Right. So cantaloupe is recalled. You hear that? Well, it's probably one variant. And because the visibility doesn't exist to be able to track down to what's happened to that cantaloupe in store, the consumer's easiest decision is, I'm just not going to buy any of it.
Right.
And then you see massive category issues, and a lot of inventory goes to waste, and is just the ripple effect of that is massive. So I think everything Derek just described around this ripple effect of increasing the compliance levels and what that can do to the entire supply chain to improve it for ordering, sourcing, ordering, supply chain management, and then being able to track those items and give that shopper confidence. It's huge, right? It's very massive.
Yeah, decimates the category, as Mike mentioned, creates enormous food waste. Think about, when you think about food waste, every item of food that's wasted that doesn't get to consumption either by a consumer or by an animal, right, is not only wasted, but all of the energy, right, all of the resources that were used to plant, cultivate, harvest, transport, all of that, it's all wasted, right? So recalls have an enormous impact on food waste, and that's one of the biggest problems is the investigators can't determine the source of the contamination. And when you can't determine the source of the contamination and people are getting sick or worse, dying, you take all of that product off the shelf. Retailers don't want anything to do with it. They push all the costs back onto the suppliers. And then in the aftermath, the attorneys come in with class action suits, and it gets even uglier. Consumers end up paying more, and consumer confidence is damaged as a result of it. Consumer trust suffers.
I think the one thing we want to add, and maybe Derek can jump in, is we have to do this part. This partnership is almost a must because we need to make this easy for retailers. There are too many options and sort of, if a solution here, a sort of workaround here, there are too many things on the table that exist in order to help them have this full visibility around data into the, data of the items into the store. And what we want to do right now is integrate so that they can have just one solution and be able to make this happen in that time without slowing down their organization. I mean, what are your thoughts there? You talked.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, ease of we have a bit of a North Star saying at our company, which is if traceability were free and easy, everybody would already be doing it because it's inherently good. So our job as a technology company is how do we create solutions that get traceability to as close to free and easy as we possibly can. This solves a lot of the easy problems, is this partnership with Upshop, because doing it at the store wasn't something that ReposiTrak was in the market for. We've been really focused on the supplier relationships. Most retailers will have thousands of suppliers, if not hundreds, definitely thousands of suppliers that they may need or want to do traceability with. Just coordinating that activity across the supplier base is enormously complex and time consuming, but the work at the stores is equally complex and time consuming unless you have great solutions in order to do that. So it's definitely a big part of it. We talk about it all the time is how do we keep the cost low? How do we make it simple? By the way, not only for the retailer, but for the supplier. Imagine a produce supplier that has 400 customers, which would be a mid-size produce supplier, right? In the U.S. They don't want to do traceability 400 different ways. They don't want to have to create a different setup for every retailer. They need universal solutions that work across their customer base, that keep it easy for them and low cost. And that's what ReposiTrak has been working on really for the last 2 years, and creating those supplier relationships that can be now leveraged and exploited as we move into this expanded relationship with Upshop and bring more retailers now into our network, because they use those same suppliers as the retailers that ReposiTrak already works with. That is the advantage. Is it's not a supply chain, it's a supply network, right? And so many of the retailers have the same suppliers in common. So it makes sense that you should use common solutions to bring traceability to reality, because it's easier. Again, it gets closer to that North Star, which is free and easy. We want to get it as close to free and easy as we possibly can.